Part 4 of the anime continues with Zenitsu, who was previously reluctant to carry out the mission, finally deciding to enter the forest to help Tanjiro and Inosuke. While walking through the forest alone, Zenitsu was surprised by the appearance of a spider with a human head, causing him to run. Not only that, but Zenitsu also found a house floating in the air, and around the house, many human bodies had spider parts. A large spider with a human head suddenly appears and tells him he has been hit by a deadly poison. The big spider was a demon assumed to be the brother demon by Rui. The brother demon can turn humans into spiders with its poison. Since Zenitsu had been exposed to the poison, he would turn into a spider in 30 minutes. Knowing that he will soon turn into a spider with a human head, he becomes increasingly panicked and scared until he finally becomes unconscious. But then he got up and fought fiercely against Brother Demon. Meanwhile, after defeating the Mother Demon, Tanjiro and Inosuke encounter another demon, who runs scared when she sees the two of them. The demon, who was in the form of a little girl, was assumed to be the sister demon by Rui. When Inosuke tries to catch her, she screams and calls out to the huge and terrifying Father Demon. Tanjiro and Inosuke were then involved in a fierce battle with the Father Demon, although their resistance was in vain because their swords could not injure his body in the slightest. Tanjiro tries to slash a tree to make it difficult for him to move. Unfortunately, with his extremely formidable physical strength, Father Demon lifted the trunk of the huge tree and slammed it into Tanjiro's body until he was thrown far from the location of their fight. After that, Tanjiro tries to find Inosuke's whereabouts. But suddenly, he heard a girl's groan, so he rushed to the source of the sound, which was none other than Sister Demon kneeling in front of Rui. Although Rui thought that the spider demons were his family, his treatment of Sister Demon did not reflect their family relationship because he did not hesitate to hurt Sister Demon. Tanjiro doesn't necessarily let Rui act as he pleases, even towards his fellow demons. Because of that, he becomes very annoyed that Tanjiro interferes in his family's affairs, even though he is just a lowly human who should be their prey. Elsewhere, Inosuke, still fighting the Father Demon, manages to cut off his hand and becomes arrogant. But then, he could regrow his arm instantly, even turning into a demon that was far more terrifying than before. Seeing that, Inosuke immediately became desperate. What's worse, both of his swords broke when he tried to slash Father Demon's body. Inosuke could only let himself receive a barrage of attacks from the Father Demon. In the end, when he almost gave up because Father Demon was preparing to kill him, a demon slayer appeared, who was none other than Giyu Tomioka. With one slash of his sword, Giyu, one of the elite members of Hashira, can cut the arm of the Father Demon and then kill him. Inosuke was also amazed to see the greatness of Giyu, who could easily defeat the Father Demon, which had overwhelmed him before. On the other hand, Zenitsu, who had succeeded in defeating Brother Demon, couldn't resist the effects of the poison in his body starting to react. Zenitsu, who had given up on turning into a spider demon, was then surprised by the appearance of one of Hashira's members, a young woman named Shinobu Kocho, who is Giyu's teammate in dealing with the demons on Mount Naragumo. She immediately injects the antidote into Zenitsu's body, so he can be saved. Meanwhile, Tanjiro, involved in a fierce battle with Rui, became increasingly overwhelmed when his Nichirin sword suddenly broke. Tanjiro was choked by Rui's barrage of attacks until finally, Nezuko got out of the wooden box and immediately protected her brother from the deadly attack. Seeing Nezuko desperately protecting Tanjiro, Rui couldn't understand why a demon slayer had a family relationship with a demon, and the demon protected him instead. Impressed by her power, Rui is increasingly ambitious to kill Tanjiro and make her a part of his family. Tanjiro became very angry and determined to defeat Rui even though his sword had been broken. Rui then reveals himself as the low-ranking member of the 12 Kizuki and unleashes his true power against Tanjiro. Rui then holds Nezuko hostage, forcing Tanjiro to fight against him to death. He probably thought Tanjiro would just give up because their strength was not comparable. However, Tanjiro remains determined to save Nezuko, even at the cost of his life. When Tanjiro almost gave up because all his attacks didn't work against Rui, he suddenly remembered what his late father had said about the fire-breathing technique. Tanjiro tries to do the fire-breathing technique his father taught him when he was a child and finally manages to break Rui's attack. On the other hand, Nezuko, held hostage by Rui in a spider's thread, was awakened by her mother through a dream, so she then got up and helped Tanjiro's resistance defeat Rui. Nezuko's attack managed to give them an opportunity, so Tanjiro immediately took advantage of the opportunity to cut off Rui's head. Even so, Rui had not been completely defeated because his headless body could still move freely, even reattaching his head. Rui, who was getting angry because of the resistance from the Kamado siblings, then used his flagship technique to kill them at once. Suddenly, Giyu arrived there and easily broke Rui's lethal attack and beat the demon to death. However, after Rui and his family demon have been defeated, a new problem arises when Shinobu tries to kill Nezuko, who is a demon. Giyu also swiftly blocked Shinobu's attack to protect her, unconscious after her fight against Rui. Tanjiro, who was seriously injured, could only protect his sister with his body because he could not stop Shinobu's sudden attack. Seeing Giyu trying to protect Tanjiro and his sister, who is a demon, Shinobu becomes curious about the relationship between them. Giyu then tells Tanjiro to take Nezuko away while he restrains Shinobu. Meanwhile, Shinobu, who couldn't understand why Giyu was protecting the demon that became their enemy, told Giyu that he had violated the rules of the demon slayers. She would not hesitate to fight Giyu if he prevented her from killing the demon. She then rushes after Tanjiro, Nezuko, and Giyu, who wants to stop her. On the other hand, Tanjiro, trying to escape as far as possible from Shinobu, was suddenly attacked by a girl named Kanao Tsuyuri, a demon slayer. When she was about to kill Nezuko, Tanjiro pulled her cape to knock her down and told Nezuko to run away immediately. Kanao, annoyed at being dropped, then hit Tanjiro on the head until he fainted. After that, she tried to chase after Nezuko, whose body was shrinking and turned into a child. Nezuko keeps trying to dodge her attacks, and Kanao can't hit her. At the same time, Giyu manages to lock up Shinobu's movement, who keeps questioning why he protects the demon. When she tries to put up a fight, a Kasugai crow appears and announces orders from headquarters to capture Tanjiro and his demon sister, Nezuko, alive and bring them to headquarters. Hearing the order, Giyu and Shinobu finally stop their quarrel and rush back to the headquarters. Elsewhere, Zenitsu, who had previously been injected with the antidote, appears fully awake and becomes confused as his body is wrapped in cloth. Meanwhile, Inosuke, who managed to survive the fight against the father demon, seemed exhausted, so he could only surrender when a group of people belonging to the Kakushi lifted his body and carried him away. The Kakushi are a brigade responsible for different tasks, ranging from providing services to the Demon Slayer Corps members to cleaning up the battlefield after demon attacks. The next day, Tanjiro, who had been taken to the Demon Slayer's headquarters, finally woke up from his stupor and was very surprised when he saw Shinobu and the Hashira members. They were standing in front of him. The Hashira are the 9 overall most powerful members and combatants in the entirety of the Demon Slayer Corps. They are often regarded as the most skilled swordsmen among all Demon Slayers, protecting them against more dangerous threats that cannot be handled by any other Demon Slayer. Therefore, their existence literally sustains the entire organization. The Hashira, by their great strength, are the highest-ranking members in the organization. When Shinobu said that Tanjiro would be prisoned for his crimes which were considered to have conspired with a demon, one of Hashira's members, named Kojiro Rengoku, nicknamed the Flame Hashira, confirmed that Tanjiro was definitely found guilty, so there was no need for a trial. On the other hand, a man named Tengen Uzui, nicknamed the Sound Hashira, also seems to agree with Kojiro. Even he couldn't wait to behead Tanjiro and Nezuko. Meanwhile, the other 2 Hashira members, a woman named Mitsuri Kanroji, the Love Hashira, and a huge man named Gome Himejima, the Stone Hashira, feel sorry for Tanjiro and Nezuko. However, they also have no intention of defending both of them. When all his colleagues discussed them, a young man named Muichiro Takoto, who was the Mist Hashira, was instead busy thinking about the shape of the clouds in the clear sky. Hearing all of their words, Tanjiro doesn't really care about it because what is on his mind now is Nezuko's safety. Shinobu, who is the insect Hashira, then asks Tanjiro to tell him the reason for protecting a demon, even though Tanjiro is the demon slayer. Shortly afterwards, Tanjiro explained everything to the Hashira members, even trying to convince them that Nezuko had never attacked or harmed a human. He also said that Nezuko never even drank blood or ate any human flesh. However, Obanai Igoro, the serpent Hashira, and the rest of the Hashira did not believe his words. In fact, Sanemi Shinazugawa, the Wind Hashira, who was annoyed at Tanjiro for having dared to violate the rules of the Demon Slayer Corps, took the wooden box where Nezuko was. He drew his sword at the wooden box, which pierced and stabbed Nezuko's body. Seeing this, Tanjiro immediately got up and slammed his own head into Sanemi's head until he collapsed. Not long after, the Demon Slayer Corps leader, Kaguya Ubuyashiki, arrives and informs him of a request from the former Water Hashira, Sakonji Urokodaki, who is also Tanjiro's mentor. Sakonji explains that Nezuko has unparalleled mental strength and rationality from the human side. Even if she was hungry, Nezuko would never hurt a human, let alone prey on them. Sakonji and Giyu turned out to have guaranteed with their own lives that Nezuko was completely harmless to mankind, so Sakonji begged Kaguya to let Nezuko live with her brother Tanjiro. Kaguya is about to decide to keep Tanjiro and Nezuko alive, especially after knowing that Tanjiro had come face to face with Muzan Kibutsuji. Even Muzan ordered his henchmen to kill him. Hearing this, the Hashira members were very surprised because they had never seen Muzan Kibutsuji, let alone face him face to face. Even so, Sanemi refuses to let Nezuko live and plans to prove to them that she is still a human-eating demon. He even dared to slash his arm to lure Nezuko out of her hideout. Seeing human blood flowing in front of her, Nezuko remained unaffected and instead remembered her good memories with her family. In her mind, all humans are her family, so she must not hurt them but must protect them. Because of that, Nezuko chose to turn away so as not to attack Sanemi. Seeing this, Kaguya becomes convinced that she will not harm humans and asks Tanjiro to prove to everyone that she can protect humans, even though she's a demon. After that, Tanjiro and Nezuko are taken to Shinobu's house, the Butterfly Mansion, so he can recover with special treatment from the Kocho family, which is famous for being very efficacious. There, he finally reunites with Zenitsu and Inosuke, who also undergo intensive treatment after their fight against the spider demons. Tanjiro was happy and grateful because he could finally safely meet his friends again. 2 weeks later, they prepared for rehabilitation training under the guidance of Kanao and the female attendants of the mansion. Over time, they managed to master 2 of the 3 practice sessions quite well. However, they haven't been able to beat Kanao in her training session because she has excellent reflexes and speed. Zenitsu and Inosuke immediately became lazy to practice, thinking that they would not be able to beat Kanao. However, not so with Tanjiro, who tries to find a way to defeat her. After getting a little advice from some of the female attendants, he finally managed to find a way to defeat her. On the other hand, Zenitsu and Inosuke undergo physical training under Shinobu's guidance to match Tanjiro, who has become much stronger after sparring with Kanao. Sometime later, Tanjiro and his friends have fully recovered and can resume their activities as the Demon Slayers. Elsewhere, following Rui's death, the remaining lower ranks are summoned into an interdimensional castle by Muzan. They face Muzan's wrath, who informs them of Rui's death and denounces the lower ranks as weak before killing them. However, Muzan spares Enmu, lower rank, the closest strongest demon to the upper ranks, and is strongly devoted to him over his macabre personality and worship of him. Muzan gives him ample blood for strength and adds that he can attain more by specifically killing Tanjiro. Meanwhile, Akatsugai Crow tells Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inosuke about their new mission to the Mugen train, where 40 people have disappeared. Afterwards, Tanjiro farewells the people of the mansion, including Kanao. He also thanks Giyu for his dedication to protecting Nezuko. Then, the 3 arrive at the train station, but Inosuke causes a commotion, attracting the police. They are forced to flee due to demon slayers not being recognized by the government, unaware that demons exist. They jump onto the train as it leaves, with Kyojuro and Lower One on board. This is the end of the anime, Part 4. The moral lesson of this story is that if we have very important people or things in our lives, we should always fight for them and protect them. In life, sometimes, we'll go through periods where we don't think we're going anywhere. But with a little push from the people around us, we'll get to where we want to be. Last but not least, we never know what someone may be going through, so we should always show kindness whenever we can.